Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to the Riverwood Conservancy's latest Facebook Live broadcast. Today, we're talking about getting into citizen science. I hope you're doing well, you're staying safe. My name is Rashid Clark. I'm the marketing specialist at the Riverwood Conservancy, and I'm joined today by Stephanie Keeler, who has taught our Education Naturally programs, and she's now our community program coordinator. Also, I think safe to say that she is a citizen science enthusiast herself, so a great person to elaborate on this topic. Before we get into the presentation, just a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, if you have questions or comments at any point throughout Stephanie's presentation, just type them into the comments section down below this video. We'll get to all of your questions and comments after Stephanie's presentation. And because of COVID-19, of course, we've had to cancel all of our events, including our largest fundraisers of the year. So if you do have the financial ability to support us through this challenging time, we would very much appreciate your contributions. You can make a donation of any amount that you're comfortable with at theriverwoodconservancy.org. Get that out of the way. And thanks again for joining us today. So Stephanie, I will turn things over to you.
Thank you so much, Rashid, and thank you everyone for taking the time and coming to see my presentation today. And also thank you for your patience as we try to work through the technology for my first Facebook Live. I'm not used to this virtual kind of presentation. I'm more used to in-person presentations, so this is quite unusual for myself. So today we are talking about citizen science, and like Rashid said, I am very passionate about citizen science. I think it's something that is really important to our future, and especially during these times that we are all home and kind of twiddling our fingers, wondering what we should do. Citizen science is a great way to connect with nature, connect with science, and different communities around the world as well. So today we are going to be going through a 15 or 20-minute presentation just on the history of citizen science and how you can get involved in your communities as well. Thank you once again for joining me. So before we get started, I will just talk a little bit about my experience with citizen science. I was a teacher before the pandemic with the Riverwood Conservancy for kids in kindergarten all the way to grade 8, and sometimes high school students as well. And I've noticed that most of the kids are connected somehow, whether it be smartphones or iPads or some sort of technology. And I think we see that as a negative thing a lot of the times, that we see technology as kind of being a takeaway from nature. They're too connected with their phones and not connected enough with nature. But I think we can use both of those things together to learn more about nature, more about our natural world, and actually better our world because of it. So this picture that you're viewing right now, it was with a grade 4 group that I had on a very rainy day. You can see everyone has rubber boots on. And I heard a little girl screaming at the back of the line. Now, if you're an outdoor teacher or educator, you know this is the worst sound ever. Your heart just drops immediately, and that's because you don't know what's going on. So I run to the back, and of course, it's a little snake. So a lot of times that's a reaction to snakes or spiders or even the thought of having a coyote in the woods with you is to be scared. But I said, no, we can pick this little guy up if we respect him. And we picked him up, and it's surprising. All of the kids kind of huddled around. A lot of them wanted to touch the snake or hold it. And we did it respectfully, and then we let it on its way. And just before we let it go, we took this image and we submitted it to a citizen science project called iNaturalist, which I'll be talking about a little bit later on. And all the kids were so excited that they were contributing to science, and they loved snakes for the rest of the day. That's all they had on their mind, was going and looking for more snakes. So I think creating an area where kids can see nature and experience nature and see that it's still safe to be outside and be connected with technology is something very important, and it could help us in the future as well. Now, what is citizen science? So by definition, it's the collection and analysis of data relating to the natural world by members of the general public, typically as part of a collaborative project with professional scientists. So that's a big, long sentence, but it basically means you and me as citizens contributing to a bigger project or a research project. And it's very important to researchers all over the world. For some reasons, we have lots of benefits. obviously more help. If you can think of one scientist or even just 5 scientists researching something like a species of micromoths, which are really tiny moths, and there's millions and billions of them on Earth, but you think about maybe 5 people trying to do this research all on their own, that would be a lot of work and almost impossible. So having citizens like ourselves submit observations and contribute to the science, it helps us as well with their research efforts. New discoveries. So a lot of times in our natural world, you have to be at the right time and right place in order to see certain things. One example is in Algonquin Park. The scientists believed that they had a population of lynx in the park, but there weren't a lot of images of them. Not a lot of people saw them. I've never seen a lynx up there myself. But citizens that were just on their camping trips or their canoe trips, they took images of these lynx and they submitted it to citizen science projects. And now we know for sure that there is a lynx population within Algonquin Park, which is pretty cool. Citizens' appreciation and knowledge is a huge one as well. If you do not have citizens' appreciation for science or, let's say, the environment, then there's not going to be any change going forward. I know Dave talked about this briefly in last week's Facebook Live on climate change and changing people's outlooks on science, and the appreciation and knowledge really pushes people to make a change and ask their governments or their communities to change for the better as well. Funding pressures and biases is another big one. Obviously, there's thousands of research projects worldwide, and all of them need funding. So having citizens do it for free and volunteer, it helps them as well. And lastly, it speeds up the process. I'll be talking a little bit later on, but there was one research project that was projected to be about 15 years in order to discover, and there was close to 200,000 citizens that got involved, and they turned that 15 years into 2 weeks. So I'll be talking a little bit later on about that as well. Now, citizen scientist was not always a term. It was first coined in the 1990s. Before that, during the 15th and 16th century, the Renaissance era, there was a term called gentleman scientist, which I don't like and a lot of people don't like anymore, just because it's not only gentlemen that are doing science, and we know that now. So this term has been changed to independent scientist, which I much rather like. Basically what this is there's scientists that are doing this without any funding from the government. They're not doing any funding from educational organizations or institutions. They fund themselves completely on their research. So these people are just passionate, and their hobbies are researching something in science. These independent scientists would come together in groups a lot of times and speak about the natural world, different theories, and bounce ideas back and forth with each other. So this is kind of the start of citizen science, as you could say. One very famous citizen science was this lady here. This is Mary Anning, and her family were very passionate about fossils in England, and she was the first person to find a plesiosaur skeleton in full. And a plesiosaur, you see the skeleton on the screen there, it's a long neck aquatic reptile. It was huge, which is very cool, but also slightly scary. And when she found the skeleton, she was actually 24 years old. And I'm thinking right now, I'm also 24 years old, and I don't have much time left to find my very own dinosaur skeleton, but that's pretty cool as well. Another citizen scientist that we don't really think as being a citizen scientist was Charles Darwin. He boarded the HMS Beagle that the British government actually paid for the Beagle to travel around the southern part of South America to map it out better and see the geology of it a little bit better. Charles Darwin saw this as a perfect opportunity to jump on board and go with them for 2 years to discover different things about the natural world as well. He had to pay his way on that ship and the food as well, though. And when I say he, I actually mean his dad. His father paid for him and his food and his living expenses while aboard the Beagle so that he could do his science and so that he could live out his passions. As we all know, Charles Darwin was kind of the father of natural selection and evolution. And you can see the pictures there on the right are of finches he drew, and he studied finches of all different shapes and sizes and different species, and he kind of wondered why their beaks were so different. So that's what all came to be. Now, I would like to put forth, though, that this happened way before the Renaissance era, that citizen science have been around since ancient times. The term wasn't science, obviously, in any means, but people have been collaborating and understanding our natural world for thousands and thousands of years. Our species itself has been on Earth what is thought to be 200,000 years of Homo sapiens. And we have been collaborating and working together to hunt, to understand the night skies so that we can understand seasons and when the best season is for different foods and just understanding the natural world in general. So I think it's been happening for thousands of years prior to people like Charles Darwin. Now, there are several ways that you can get involved as well in citizen science. If you aren't a tech-savvy person, a great way is to join a naturalist club. This is actually an image from my naturalist club when I was in university. It was where I met a lot of like-minded people, and we went out every weekend to places like Bruce Peninsula or Point Pelee or Algonquin Park to understand different kinds of subjects. So we would work alongside sometimes turtle researchers to understand more about turtles as well. So most communities have naturalist clubs. If you Google it, you could probably find a naturalist club in your own community. At the Riverwood Conservancy, we do have a junior naturalist club. It's obviously canceled due to the pandemic, but it's for students in grade 3s to grade 8 that are interested in the natural world, and they can get involved in citizen science projects as well through that. Another great way to get involved is joining a Bioblitz, which I love that word. A Bioblitz is basically a large area. So if we took Riverwood and then you chop it up into different areas. So let's say we chop it up into 4s. Then groups would split up, and for a period of time, usually it's a short period of time of like 8 hours or 10 hours, that these volunteers, these citizen science, would go out and survey each of those 4 areas. And then at the end of the day, you come back and you kind of tally up all of what you found. So you could be surveying moths or butterflies or dragonflies or birds. You'd come back and you tally up all that you found within your area. And if you do this annually, it's a great way to kind of discover the biodiversity within your own little area or large area. Riverwood's huge. And understand how populations are being impacted by different things as well. So the original Bioblitz was actually created for a very interesting reason. In our past, to observe animals like birds or anything of the sort, mammals, we'd often shoot them in order to observe them closer. So a lot of these bird drawings that you see here were actually, these animals were shot so that you can observe them right up close, and then we would preserve the birds for further research on them. It wasn't until the National Audubon Society kind of said, hey, this probably isn't the greatest idea. Bird populations are probably being impacted by us shooting them all. So let's change it up a bit. And they created the first Bioblitz, which was called a Christmas bird count. And this Christmas bird count happened in 1900. So it's been 120 years now since the first one. And every December since then, people from all over the place have gone out and counted birds for one day in December to see the kind of different biodiversity and birds that we have in each location. One Bioblitz that you can get involved with right now is Credit Valley Conservation is having a butterfly blitz. So this is surveying all the different butterfly diversity that is within the Credit River watershed. And this is all done virtually through iNaturalist, which I will be talking about on the next slide. Credit Valley Conservation has been doing this since June, I believe, and it ends at the end of September. So there is some time, we're about halfway through. There's some time to join. If you have any butterfly observations, you can go to Credit Valley Conservation's website and submit those and join the Bioblitz too. So now I'm going to kind of transition into apps and technology that you can use to join science or citizen science. My absolute favorite is iNaturalist. I probably use this every other day, if not every day. It is super user-friendly and it's a lot of fun as well to connect with different people on there. iNaturalist, all you got to do is take an image of something in nature, so say this coyote here, or maybe a plant or a leaf or a cone or a bug, anything. You submit it to the app, and what it does is it scans the image and it uses image recognition in order to identify what species it is. So if I was to submit this onto iNaturalist, it would likely say a coyote, which is really interesting as well. But it doesn't have to be the individual species that you submit to iNaturalist. It can also be tracks and scat as well. So footprints, poop, scratches on a tree, shelter, nests, anything like that, you can submit as well. And iNaturalist will scan these images too, and they will try to figure out what species left that behind and why they're there. Once you submit your observation, you can scan out and see the whole world and all the different observations of different species or of the one that you just observed, which is really cool. It's my absolute favorite. Journey North is another project that you can get on your phone or online. It's surveying migratory species like our monarch butterflies. Monarchs are struggling greatly due to habitat loss in their wintering grounds, which is in Mexico. They fly all the way to Mexico, or in their summering grounds, which are here in Ontario and all over the place. We are losing things like their host plant, which is the common milkweed. So monarchs are struggling greatly. So Journey North, you observe a monarch, you take a picture of it, you submit it to them, and then you can actually look at a live map of where the species is during different seasons and during different parts of the year, which is very interesting. Oh, and the Journey North is not just for monarch butterflies, it's for most migratory species. So things like American robin or ruby-throated hummingbird, which goes all the way to Costa Rica every year. You can add observations of those as well to better understand what's going on with the populations. And we don't really understand why and how they migrate yet. So you're adding more to that research project as well. One that is very relevant to today is Loss of the Night. Loss of the Night is a project that is basically to survey different light pollution levels in each area. So if you were to go outside, you could use your phone to submit a record, and it would survey how much light pollution you have in the night sky. So if you were to go outside of my house right now, or if you're in Toronto or Mississauga, you likely wouldn't see this beautiful night sky just because there's so many lights around us that it kind of lights out the night sky. But if you were to go to places like Algonquin Park, you may be able to see the Milky Way and all these stars, just like you see in this image. Now, this is very relevant to today because the Perseid shower, the meteor shower, is tonight. It's at its peak tonight. So if you're interested in meteors and viewing meteors, it would be really interesting to go out tonight. The best time is after midnight, but I was out around 10:30 last night and I saw some good meteors going by. So try to get out of the city as much as possible if you have the opportunity to, but you still would be able to see some if you were in Mississauga or Toronto as well. One that we use at Riverwood is called EdMaps or EDD Maps. I don't know which one it is. EdMap Ontario. And this is to survey the invasive species that we have all over Ontario. So the abundance, the spread of them, how many in certain areas, and it's in hopes that we can mitigate the problems and actually try to cut back on how many invasive species we have. Things that are really big are things like garlic mustard. They're the little white flowers that you see all over the sidewalks and things like that. That's a huge invasive species. Another one would be gypsy moth. The gypsy moths were crazy this year. I don't know if anybody saw little brown moths all over their maple trees laying eggs. Those are invasive species as well. So you could submit those observations to EdMap Ontario. And the last citizen science project that I will talk about today is Foldit. Now, this goes way beyond my knowledge. I am not good with this at all, but I'm putting it on there for people that are interested in it. Foldit is a puzzle game that you can actually contribute to research on proteins. So Foldit is a puzzle that you fold these different proteins, and proteins are used in our body for many different reasons. And one of the main reasons is to fight off diseases and to better understand these diseases and how they work. So what you do is you can sign on to your laptop and you fold this protein into the smallest, most efficient way, and then you submit it. And thousands of other people are doing the exact same puzzle as you are. And researchers will try to find the best way to fold these different proteins in order to fight off different diseases. So this one, you don't even have to leave your house. You can just play a puzzle on your game and you're contributing to science, which is very interesting. I know now that there is also, during this pandemic, this is really important, and they have a coronavirus citizen science project as well to kind of track where coronavirus is going and how to kind of limit the spread of it, which is very important during these times. Now, here at Riverwood, we have several citizen science projects as well that we like to engage our volunteers with. One of them is amphibian monitoring program. So every spring when our amphibians, frogs and toads are mating, they love to sing, as you may know. So our amphibian monitoring program basically is volunteers going out and monitoring how loud the calls are, when they are occurring, so that we can better understand what seasons our toads and frogs are mating in, and how many are there, and if their populations are swaying at all. Another is growing species database. So most of our database and what we know about Riverwood is directly contributed by citizens that are walking through our woodlands. It's very important to our understanding of our woodlands as well. So all of us as staff members walk through recreationally through Riverwood Conservancy, and we have so many great citizens that also submit different observations that they find of different species that are in Riverwood as well. So that's why we know what we know about Riverwood. And the last one we have is tree monitoring and planting program. So volunteers will go out and plant trees, but also they will monitor native species of trees, how they are doing, if they need to be replanted or if they need to be replanted elsewhere. And this is all in efforts to fight things like invasive species. The last thing I'll plug here at the very end is we do have a iNaturalist project that we just submitted. So we just made this about a month ago, I believe, and we have 140 people that have used iNaturalist on the Riverwood Conservancy, and all 140 people have made close to 1,900 observations of different animals, different species, plants, insects, birds, mammals, all sorts of things. So 140 observers, but we only have 3 members, if you can look at the top right corner, and I'm pretty sure one of those are me. So if you do have iNaturalist and you commonly come to the Riverwood Conservancy, it would be great if you could join this project so that we can better understand how our natural world works and what kind of species we have in Riverwood as well. That's all I have for you today, but if you would like to see more on citizen science, I'd be happy to do another Facebook Live because there's so much more. I didn't want to overwhelm, but there's thousands of projects, thousands of ways you can get involved as well. So I didn't want to overwhelm everyone, but if you'd like to see more, let us know.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Stephanie, and all kinds of great information, great apps to use. And yes, we always want to encourage people to really make the most out of their time at Riverwood. And by contributing to the iNaturalist project at Riverwood, you're of course helping us. You're helping scientists in the local community, and maybe enjoying nature with a little extra layer of knowledge and interest. So some great ideas, and hopefully people will get a chance to do that around Riverwood. Just a reminder that at Riverwood right now, our parking lots are open, the trails are accessible. Of course, we do still ask that you practice proper physical distancing and limit the number of large groups that are taking part in hikes on the trails. And keep in mind that at least for the time being, public washroom facilities are still closed. Of course, we'll have updates on that as we go along, but just some general information for people if you are heading out to the trails in the next couple of days and over the rest of the month as we try to enjoy what's left of summer. If you do have questions for us, please type them into the comment section. We'll get to them as we wrap up the presentation now. And just a couple of questions that came in ahead of time, so I'll pose this one to Stephanie. What can someone do in their own community to help with citizen science?
So a great way to engage your community is just by starting in your own backyard. I think this is especially important right now during the pandemic that we're all staying home. But go out in your backyard and find the biodiversity in your backyard first. I think that's super important. If you don't have a backyard, just go to the park or nearby. There's so many places that you can explore on your own just to start there. And then once you start doing that, it's usually your friends that start getting involved as well. I've shown my friends a lot of how interesting iNaturalist is. So all of them have it on their phones now, and they have been submitting things in their own backyards too. So just starting in your own backyard or in a park nearby is usually the first way to go.
Absolutely. I mean, there's nature still all around us, so we do want to encourage people to get out and enjoy that green space, even if it's not at Riverwood. Yeah. Next question, what if you find a rare or endangered species, can you still report it on an app?
Yes, absolutely. So it does get kind of iffy with this question, just because you do not want to put a location with a rare or endangered species, just in the case that they are people flock to that area because of that. But there's things like iNaturalist will actually private the location if you add a rare or endangered species so that the general public can't see it, but scientists that were doing research on that specific species can see that. So a lot of these apps and these citizen science projects take that into account ahead of time and private that.
And the last question I think we'll get to for today, and appropriate as we are still unfortunately in the middle of the pandemic and people are spending more time at home and again doing their part to spread to slow the spread of COVID-19. So are there ways that people can still help contribute to citizen science even if they want to stay very close to home or even just in their own backyard?
Yeah, for sure. Most of the projects are good for even in your home. When I was talking about Foldit, you don't even have to leave your home to do that kind of citizen science project. And there's a lot of astronomy-based citizen science projects as well that you can just work on your computer completely and using the images that they provide you to better analyze their research. So there's tons of citizen science projects that you can do just on your computer if you don't want to go outside. But we encourage going outside. We like people that go outside.
Of course, getting outside and doing it all safely. Thank you again, Stephanie, for your time, your expertise, and giving a lot of great information for people to get a little further into the nature that's all around them. So again, we appreciate your time. And to everyone watching today, thank you for spending a little bit of time with us and hope that you were able to enjoy the presentation. We still have more coming up for you later this month on Facebook Live, as well as our bird photography webinar. So have a look at our next live events over on our website at the riverwoodconservancy.org. And while you're there, if you have the financial ability to give us a donation, of course, we'd appreciate that as we deal with the challenges of canceling all of our events due to COVID-19. Again, donations are always appreciated at the riverwoodconservancy.org. So thanks for joining us today. Please stay safe. Stephanie, thank you again for your time, and we will see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.